Wanted to help all the younger Lauras out there who are also struggling with their identity growing up in middle school or high school to be able to empower themselves and like take charge of who they are. 大家好，我是 Laura Gao， 我是一个画漫画的艺術家。
I was born in Wuhan, China. When I was 3, my family settled in a small town in Texas, where Wuhan was more foreign than Mars. I quickly learned to be embarrassed by it every time anyone asked. The kids in class would say stuff like, Wuhan? Or, is that where the only other Asian kid in class is from?
When a lot of the anti-Asian discrimination was happening at the beginning of the pandemic, it affected me a lot personally. One time I was walking on the street and a person came up and he just coughed in my face and laughed at me, and he was white himself. Most of my family is in Wuhan, and during the time of the pandemic, I saw how much people in my hometown was suffering and how much my city was being criticized and lampooned in the media. So I wanted to showcase how beautiful my city actually was in the ways that many people in the United States and around the world did not understand and know. And I think in the beginning when people would ask like, oh, like, where are you from? And I would shy away from that question. I'd be like, oh, I'm from China. And then they might be like, oh, from where? And then I would kind of change the subject or like hide away. I was afraid of like, if I said Wuhan, like what would they think of me? What made me speak up was that it seemed like no one else was really speaking up at the time. A lot of folks think that Asians are quiet or like, aren't involved in politics. And as someone who has experienced racism for a lot of my life, I was just tired of it. I wanted to say something and put it out there. I absolutely loved scripting. I had this like giant Excel document where I wrote down every single one of my memories. By plotting it out and color coding it, in a sense, it felt like I was revisiting my entire life journey and also therapizing myself through all of it. I was now connecting all these dots of like, oh, this happened when I was a kid, and then that led to this happening when I was a teenager. As I was connecting these dots, it made so much sense to me, this journey. And that journey is what I ended up writing for Messy Roots. The biggest challenges for me making the book were telling the story authentically and also accessing a lot of times where it was pretty traumatic for different parts of my childhood. I had known I was queer, or at least I had feelings that I was queer for as long as I can remember, but I had always suppressed it because in this, Christian upbringing, and my parents are Christian too, I just always thought that was bad, I should not entertain that. Growing up, I had to hide a lot of myself. I came from an Asian household, but most of my friends were white and didn't understand that. And I wanted to be, to fit in with everyone. I've always felt like I was never American enough and also never Chinese enough. I remember the first time I visited back to Wuhan, almost a decade after we immigrated. I thought that, like finally I could fit in, like everyone looked like me. Even so, my cousins were like, you don't dress like you're Chinese, you don't walk like you're Chinese. I did terrible at Chinese school. I had a hard time kind of relating to my cousins who were the same age as me. But one really great thing was that I retained a lot of the Wuhanese dialect from talking to my grandparents growing up. I was able to fit in that way and be able to communicate with the Wuhanese dialect and feel like I was at home then, but especially when I got back to Texas and then realizing that I had to try to balance two different cultures. My main motivation for moving to Taipei was also to get a better understanding of my Asian American culture. At the time, I couldn't really get into mainland because of the pandemic, but I was able to get a work visa here in Taiwan. I wanted to practice my Chinese, get better at speaking to people, appreciate the good food and culture here, and also to let that inspire my art and have the culture be infused into my art so that I can get both the East and the West perspective. I don't like to identify as just one thing. My purpose is actually the everything in between, which to me is loving everyone else around me and being able to tell stories that also inspire others.